Will Levis was throwing bombs all weekend at Tennessee Titans training camp, and I'm breaking down everything you need to know on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Titans had multiple practices over the weekend, and Will Levis stood out. He was throwing bombs all over the place. And we finally saw the right side of the offensive line that I wanted to see over the weekend. I'll tell you how that went and talk about the injuries that happened as well. Before we get into all of that, I do want to thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first to listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. And if you aren't an everydayer, well, you need to be one. Make sure you throw a thumbs up on the video if you're watching on YouTube, and throw a tighten up down in the comments as well. But with all that being said, again, Will Levis continues to stand out at training camp. And specifically on Saturday, he was absolutely dropping bombs all over practice. And this is exactly what you want to hear about Will Levis. This is why Titans fans should be so fired up about what Will Levis is going to do this year. Everything is set up to match up with his skill set. I mean, this is exactly what you want to hear. So what exactly happened? So first things first, we saw an absolute dot from Will Levis to Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. It was down the sideline, off play action. Looked like it might have been a 50-yard bomb. I mean, not only were Titans fans losing their mind when the social media team put it out on Tennessee Titans Twitter, but everyone around the NFL was kind of freaking out. I saw multiple accounts, these aggregator accounts that are all over the place, some of the big names on social media that cover football at large. Just everybody was like, my goodness, Will Levis, what a throw. I mean, it was a perfect tight spiral, had such great arc on it, right on the sideline to NWI, right with two defenders on him. He put it in a perfect spot. I mean, this is why I've said all season, Will Levis has two elite physical traits. His arm strength, which turns into throw velocity and obviously how far he can throw it down the field, and his release quickness. Hits NWI for the big pass. Not only that, but we saw a 70-yard touchdown to Tyler Boyd. Now, this one wasn't a bomb down the field. It was just a perfect arm angle, perfect placement pass where Will Levis just kind of flicks his wrist, keeps his arm in a low slot, hits Tyler Boyd on the crossing route. He catches it, turns upfield, and burns rubber and gets all the way to the end zone. I mean, again, it would have been a 70-yard touchdown. So we got the bomb to NWI. We got the big play to Tyler Boyd, which is going to be a great connection. But that wasn't it. We got a deep crossing route to Chigakonkwo. Got a deep crossing route to Traylon Burks where he slid down and caught the ball. We got some nice short routes to Josh Wiley as well. And I got to mention, the back shoulder fade connection to Calvin Ridley has just shown itself day in, day out in training camp. Will Levis is hooking up with all of his top targets. Now, I will say there was one play in one-on-ones with the wide receivers versus the cornerbacks where Calvin Ridley absolutely dusted one of the Titans' low-end corners. But Will Levis was a little long. He was a little long on the throw. And he said calibrating where to throw it with how fast Calvin Ridley is something that takes some adjustment. He's talked about it. It's going to take, a little bit more time, more reps, but they'll get it figured out. Once Will Levis and Calvin Ridley get on the same timing with those deep routes, again, this is why I was so excited about the addition of Calvin Ridley. This is why it was my favorite offseason move of the entire offseason, because Calvin Ridley can take the top off the defense, and plus Will Levis's arm strength and ability to throw deep. To some low red zone on Sunday, hits Tajay Spears over the middle for a touchdown, gets a little screen pass to Tony Pollard for a touchdown. I mean, Will Levis is just hooking up with everybody all weekend long. And no, I'm not talking about former Bachelorette contestants, baby. We are talking about passes all over the field. So, again, I know I've talked a ton about Will Levis this offseason, talked a ton about Will Levis this training camp. But as we have discussed multiple times, Will Levis is the key to the season. Will Levis is the key to the franchise. If the Titans want to be Super Bowl contenders soon, it's going to be on the arm of Will Levis. So this is exactly what you want to hear. Came out early, a little sluggish. On Saturday was a great day. Saturday was a great practice. But you come back into a red zone period, Will Levis and the rest of the offense as well. You got to give the rest of the offense credit here with Malik Willis, with Mason Rudolph as well. 12 attempts, 6 touchdowns. So the offense absolutely started to cook at the end of Sunday's practice to go with the great finish to the week that they had last week, to go with Saturday's practice, which was incredible. I mean, this offense is coming around. We were all worried at the beginning. The defense was dominating. It was ugly before the pads got on. Once the pads came on, the offense got a little more settled. Everybody gets a little bit more comfortable. You start to rep stuff multiple times, and now you're seeing the offense have some great moments, make some big plays, and seeing some of the big playmakers on the team make those big plays. Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, Nick Westbrook-Akine. All jokes aside, though, again, you're seeing everybody involved here, and this is exactly what you want to see as a Titans fan. So Will Levis dropping bombs, throwing rockets, throwing darts out on the board. I absolutely love to see it, and you should be fired as well. But I'll be honest with you. Will Levis, not the star of training camp. So he continued his domination. Before I do that, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. When it's your schedule in the summertime, you know it's going to be packed. It's going to have kids' activities, big work projects, and it's kind of easy to let your priorities slip. Even when you know what makes you happy, sometimes it can still be hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, those non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. I've worked with BetterHelp before. I was in the middle of moving houses. The show was crazy. We were in training camp preseason, but BetterHelp really helped me stay grounded. All right. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, you have to give BetterHelp a try. Again, it's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon and get 10% off your first month today. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Titans fans, let's continue today's breakdown of weekend training camp practices for the Tennessee Titans. And talk about the big defensive star, and that's T'Vondre Sweat. Obviously, I've had my opinions on T'Vondre Sweat coming out of the draft, when he was drafted, some of the summer stuff, but I got nothing but positives to say about T'Vondre Sweat right now, and that seems to be the common theme in training camp. so far. So we're going to get into that. Before we do want to thank you again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Now, for your second listen, enjoy Locked On Fantasy Football. You're going to get daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. It's Locked On Fantasy Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. But let's just talk about some of this T'Vondre Sweat stuff, man. I mean, on Saturday, had a big pressure on the first team offense, stopped a screen pass. Will Levis literally had to throw the ball in the dirt because T'Vondre Sweat was putting so much pressure on. He destroyed Lloyd Cushenberry in a one-on-one situation during one rep at practice. Now, everybody was freaking out about that rep, and I even saw somebody say, I'm tired of these undersized centers. Cushenberry is not an undersized center. Lloyd Cushenberry is a big. So, I mean, at this point, it's only been 1 week of training camp, no doubt. But you got to give credit where credit is due. And T'Vondre Sweat has been absolutely incredible. You move to Sunday, got a sack for a safety. The Titans were doing a backed up period where the offense was on the 1 yard line. T'Vondre Sweat busts in, gets in Will Levis's face, and it would have been a safety in a real game. So we're talking about sacks every day, multiple pressures every day, big one-on-one wins against the Titans starting offensive linemen every day, sack for a safety on Sunday. I mean, at this point, there has been nobody on defense more dominant than T'Vondre Sweat. Now, I do want to stress this. It's 1 week of training camp. All right, 1 week of training camp. So, obviously with my hot take on T'Vondre Sweat when he got drafted, I'm going to have people lining up to tell me I'm a moron based on one-on-one reps on the first week of training camp, blah, 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 blah. Look, 1 week of training camp doesn't mean that T'Vondre Sweat should get fitted for his Hall of Fame jacket. Let's be honest there. But at the same time, I mean, you couldn't be more excited about T'Vondre Sweat. He could not. I remember saying before training camp started, give me something positive to talk about. Everybody says we're too negative about T'Vondre Sweat. Well, give me something positive to talk about. And man, he has delivered. All right. All throughout the first week without pads, the open practice. Then you put the pads on for multiple practices. He's still making waves. Sunday, it comes to a crescendo. He's still making waves. I'm so excited to watch T'Vondre Sweat in these preseason games. I mean, he has been dominant in training camp so far. If he continues to be in good shape, continues to take practice seriously, continues to stay locked in. I mean, Rand Carthon may have dropped an absolute bomb like Will Levis. You know what I mean? This could be an incredible defense-changing pick. That's the potential here. That is the potential. Will he meet the potential? Will he reach the potential when it matters in the games? That remains to be seen. But again, nothing but great stuff coming from T'Vondre Sweat right now. There's no way that anybody, including me, could hate anything that T'Vondre Sweat is doing. And I'm not the only one noticing. The reporters aren't the only ones noticing. His head coach, his teammates are taking notice as well. J.C. Latham talked about T'Vondre Sweat after practice on Sunday. He said he's a great athlete. He's not one of those sloppy big men that all they can do is bull rush. He wants to be better than Jeffrey Simmons, and Jeffrey Simmons is the best in the game, is what J.C. Latham said. I mean, a motivated T'Vondre Sweat. Remember, I would say 75% of my concerns about T'Vondre Sweat coming out of college were off the field commitment, conditioning, weight control, stuff like that. All right. If he is locked in with all of that stuff, I mean, why couldn't he be Dexter Vita Vea? Why couldn't he be an Albert Hainsworth? You know what I mean? That's I mean, the Titans are cooking with gas on the interior defensive line, and that kind of changes the entire group if you have two players at that level. So, again, remains to be seen what will happen in the regular season, but boy, great start to training camp. Well, let me tell you what Brian Callahan had to say as well. So powerful and also has pass rush wiggle, which is effective for his size. I feel him when I'm standing back there calling plays. He and Jeffrey Simmons have made an impact, end quote. I mean, getting a lot of praise here and proving it and earning it as well. So that's what you love to hear if you're a Tennessee Titans fan. If you follow me on Twitter, also my hair is a freaking mess. If you're watching on YouTube, my apologies. Just acting crazy right now. It's a big, long story on that I won't get into with the internet. I had a drill in my hand and things were crazy. But anyways. So, I mean, how could you not be excited? T'Vondre Sweat absolutely dominating training camp. Cedric Gray finally showed up and made some plays on Sunday, got a sack, some pressures. James Williams made a couple of plays on Sunday as well. So nice to hear those rookie linebackers who've kind of been pushed to the side compared to what we're hearing about all the other draft guys with J.C. Latham and obviously T'Vondre Sweat and Jarvis Brownlee and Jaquan Jackson. You know what I mean? Like, it's nice to hear about those other guys. As we heard about Jalen Harrell in the first week, kind of slowed down on the love he's getting. Haven't heard really any. The first day that he noticed Cedric Gray. So starting to make some plays more as of late. Love to hear that. But with that being said, we got to talk about this offensive line because Nicholas Petit-Frere is back and Dillon Radunz got work as a starting right tackle over the weekend with Sadiq Charles out with a personal reason. So can't wait to talk about the offensive line. And I'll give you an update on some of the injuries that have happened over the weekend as well. So we'll talk about that next. Before we do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and I can dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. You could do a ton of prop bets for the NFL. Titans plus 4.5 week 1 against the Chicago Bears on FanDuel. I love the odds on that as well. So make sure that you head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer, because this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Make sure you check out FanDuel.com. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Titans fans, let's cap off today's recap of training camp practices over the weekend. We talked about Will Levis and his connection with the Titans pass catchers. We talked about T'Vondre Sweat and the defense dominating. Now, we got to talk about this offensive line because Dillon Radunz and Nicholas Petit-Frere finally got their chance to work together on the right side over the weekend. I'll tell you how that came about. Before I do, thank you again for making Locked On Titans your first listen. Now, go listen to Locked On Fantasy Football. You're going to get the best daily insights, fantasy strategies so that you can win your league. You can find the link to Locked On Fantasy Football in the description down below, so you don't need to search. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. But with that being said, Sadiq Charles was out over the weekend with a personal issue. So personal reasons, not an injury, but personal reasons, he was out over the weekend. Dillon Radunz steps up into the right guard spot. Also, Nicholas Petit-Frere activated off the PUP on Friday, joined practice, and was out there in the right tackle battle. They were rotating the right tackles a ton, but obviously Nicholas Petit-Frere got his fill of opportunities, and You're hearing about Will Levis dropping all these bombs on Saturday. Why do you think that's happening? Because the Titans finally put their best offensive line out on the field. It's Dillon Radunz at right guard and Nicholas Petit-Frere at right tackle. Look, I've heard all the Sadiq Charles stuff. Sadiq Charles makes sense. I get why he would be the starter. He's bigger, stronger than Dillon Radunz. That matches more with what they're trying to do up front. I get it. But Dillon Radunz is a better player than Sadiq Charles. I firmly believe that. And Dillon Radunz has not gotten an opportunity his entire career to just play one position and really hone in on that and get an opportunity to be a starter while doing that. He has not gotten that opportunity from Mike Vrabel before, and obviously wasn't given that opportunity right out of the gate this year. But with Sadiq Charles out, Dillon Radunz steps in. And look, we're talking about T'Vondre Sweat dominating in one-on-ones, right? Well, Dillon Radunz had a win against T'Vondre Sweat in one-on-ones. Dillon Radunz had a big win against Keandre Coburn in one-on-ones. All right? So, again, I just firmly believe that Dillon Radunz is one of the best 5 offensive linemen on this team. And I think it's no coincidence that the offense had time to hit all these deep shots down the field when NPF is back at right tackle and Dillon Radunz is at right guard. Sadiq Charles may be a better run blocker than Dillon Radunz, but I think that Dillon Radunz is going to be a better pass blocker. And I think he's stronger and he's more secure. He's going into his 4th season. It is time to let Lord Radunz take his spot. Like, that is the best 5. Latham, Skoronski, Cushenberry, Radunz, NPF. Like, we don't have to play around. I know it's fun for these position battles, and they got to give guys, equal opportunity and all that. I do get it. But I'm just here to say, we know who the best 5 offensive line is. Actually getting the opportunity to have some protection. When the right side of the offensive line has been a major issue throughout the first 10 days of training camp. You know what I mean? 2 weeks of training camp. It's been a major issue. So now it's time to go to the other guys and see how they do. That's how I feel. We didn't get any specific information on Nicholas Petit-Frere, how he performed in practice, just team stuff, not like we got from Radunz and the one-on-ones and everything like that. But I'm sure we will get more of that as we go along this week. The Titans are back out on the practice field on Wednesday. They have their first preseason game of the year on Saturday. It is a great time to be an everydayer of the Locked On Titans podcast. So make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. We're going to have some fun conversations about everything playing out here over the next 2 days, and you won't want to miss it. But with that being said, that is going to do it for me today, folks. As always, also, if there are any technical issues today, my apologies. Again, I'm trying to work with my internet for the season. Been a disaster, but hopefully didn't impact things too much. But with that being said, that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.